Minister, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Great to be here, Rosie.
I guess I want to start with the request that we reported on this week from Ukraine, asking for more military aid, everything from armored vehicles to howitzers. Where is the state of that request? And I guess what kind of things are you considering when those requests are made?
To date, Rosie, Canada has committed over $600 million of military aid for Ukraine. And I spoke with Minister Resnikov on Friday, in fact, and we discussed Ukraine's needs and how Canada can help. And we will continue to work on those items. In addition, I have some very good news to share with you today, Rosie. In March, we set up a hub in Prestwick, Scotland. And we have delivered 4 million pounds of cargo, largely in aid to Ukraine for other countries as well as Canada. We are building out this facility to become an air mobility detachment, and we're adding a third aircraft, a third CC-130, as well as increasing personnel. So we'll have 55 Canadian Armed Forces members there. And this is so important because we are expanding the ways in which we are assisting Ukraine and getting military aid to Ukraine by delivering even more aid.
And if I can just go to some of the specific requests, I'm sure that's good news for Ukraine, but just for some of the more specific requests, are there, for instance, in our inventory, used armored vehicles that we could pull out, repair, and send to Ukraine? Is that something that you might be considering?
So what we have committed already is the 39 armored vehicles from GDLS, and those are brand new vehicles, fresh off the line for Ukraine. And what we want to do is make sure we get Ukraine the vehicles that they need and want. And so we're looking not only at inventory, but we're looking at how we can partner with industry. And in fact, on Monday, I will be meeting with industry partners to discuss the moral and operational imperative for Canadian industry, as well as the Government of Canada, of course, to step up and partner together.
Does the state of the war and what many people thought might be the beginning of a turning point in terms of Ukraine's success in the East, does that accelerate some of your decision making? Is that what accelerated this announcement that you're giving us right now, for instance?
We will be with Ukraine in the short and the long term, and I and our government have been saying that from the very beginning, from February 24th. And that's the reality. We are wholly committed to the sovereignty of Ukraine and to the rules-based international order. And that's why we are so adamant about the need to continue delivering military aid to Ukraine, providing military aid and equipment to Ukraine, and in fact, training Ukrainian soldiers as we are doing under Operation Unifier in England right now.
Let me ask you a little bit about Canada's commitment to Latvia to increase the capacity for that nation to defend itself. The Chief of the Defence Staff said at NATO that his country needs long-range artillery, anti-tank defences, air defence, missiles. There's a list of things here. Is Canada trying to facilitate the purchase of that equipment? Is that part of what your government is also doing to make sure that Latvia is too prepared to defend itself?
Our operation on NATO's eastern flank is called Operation Reassurance, and by all means, we are very tightly integrated in NATO's presence there. And in particular, we lead the Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group in Latvia, and we've done so for 5 years. So yes, we are working with all of the partner countries in the EFP battle group there and making sure that we are building towards brigade level as we promised to do at the Madrid summit. These are conversations that are happening right now. In fact, our Chief of Defence Staff, Wayne Eyre, was just in Latvia having the conversations with our partners to ensure that we're doing whatever we can to support NATO's eastern flank and Latvia in particular.
And presumably those purchases, those stocks of that kind of equipment would also be available to Canadian Armed Forces on the ground, I assume?
The reality is we'll continue to source equipment for the Canadian Armed Forces specifically, as well as for our missions around the world, our operations around the world. And so providing additional equipment, of course, is on the table, as well as providing additional personnel when we move to brigade level.
Can I ask, the Prime Minister said back in June that it was important that anything that we are obviously giving to Ukraine or to other NATO countries, we are then replacing in our own inventory. Do you have any updates on how that is going? If we've made any progress in procuring or finding other pieces that we can already replace from the inventory we had to send away?
It is a priority for us to make sure that the inventory of the Canadian Armed Forces is continually well stocked. And so we will continue to source material for our inventory as well as for donations to Ukraine and upgrading our facilities in Latvia and other countries. The reality is that our partnering with industry is fundamentally important here. All countries around the world at this point who are part of NATO and who are providing aid to Ukraine are looking at inventory to see how the balance can be struck with maintaining the equipment needed for their own armed forces while providing aid to Ukraine. So yes, this is front and center on my mind.
Finally, I just want to ask you what you make of President Putin's comments this week, obviously mobilizing more troops to fight in Ukraine, these nuclear threats. What does that tell you about the state of the war? How worrying is that to you as Minister of National Defence?
Well, Canada condemns these actions, and I am personally appalled and disgusted by the actions that Vladimir Putin is taking in an illegal and unprovoked invasion of a sovereign country. I choose to focus on the aid that Canada can provide to Ukraine in the short and the long term, and do whatever I can, and our government as well, to ensure the stability, the safety, and the security of the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian country itself.
It certainly seems, though, that he is not backing down in spite of, some success by the Ukrainian offensive in the east. I mean, what do you make of the fact that he is relentlessly pursuing this?
Rosie, these are acts of desperation. The reality is that the Russian army has suffered a series of failures, first north of Kiev, then in Odessa, now in eastern Ukraine. And the reality is that the NATO alliance's support of an incredibly resilient Ukrainian army has proven to be a large hurdle for Vladimir Putin, and we will continue to be there for Ukraine. And its resilience is really something to behold.
Minister, thank you for your time. As always, appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rosie. Take care.